Hey folks, Erick Stakelbeck here. Welcome to the Watchman Newscast live stream. Going a little bit later today. Hope you're still with us. It's about 4:30 here in Texas, and great to be with you. Had a busy day here lined up of filming, but let's get into this because a busy day in the world's most chaotic and volatile region, the Middle East. We want to break down real quick what's going on and why it all matters to you. Today, I'm sad to say, has been the largest Hezbollah attack against Israel since August 25th. Over 100 rockets launched from southern Lebanon, Hezbollah's home base, into northern Israel, in specific hitting, once again, the beleaguered city of Kiryat Shimona, which is a beautiful city in the north of Israel, and also the Galilee Panhandle. You saw the title of today's live stream, The Barrage Against the Galilee. Folks, over 100 rockets. Now, I think it's very telling that it barely, this kind of barrage, over 100 rockets, barely makes a blip on the mainstream media's radar screen at this point. It seems like in the world's view that Israel and Hezbollah have kind of settled in to this tit for tat type situation. They've called it a, quote, low intensity conflict. I don't know, when 100 rockets are falling and dozens of people have been killed on the Israeli side, hundreds of Hezbollah terrorists also killed. That seems pretty high intensity to me. Call me crazy. But nonetheless, Hezbollah had been licking its wounds after about a week and a half ago now, right? After about a week and a half ago on a Sunday, that incredible Israel preemptive strike when Hezbollah was gearing up to bombard northern and central Israel, including Mossad headquarters, sensitive military sites. Israel headed them off at the pass, so to speak, and carried out really a stunning and powerful preemptive strike against Hezbollah, striking rocket launchers throughout Lebanon and important Hezbollah sites. So Hezbollah has been licking its wounds. It had been a bit more quiet over the past week and a half. And then today, back full bore with a pretty significant barrage. Israel responding, of course, with airstrikes. Here's a bit more. Just reading this from Times of Israel. By the way, welcome if you're just joining us, folks. And if you like what you're hearing, and if you like current events, breaking news, in particular from the Middle East, but on a global scene in general, and from an unapologetically biblical perspective, be sure to subscribe and click the notification bell so you get alerts every time a new video is posted. We'd love to have you here every day as watchmen and women on the wall. More than 100 rockets and missiles launched by Hezbollah at northern Israel today. Israel has carried out at least 14 strikes, 14, by the Israeli Air Force in response to this bombardment out of southern Lebanon. And here is a bit more. Again, largest Hezbollah attack since August 25th. And this attack, thankfully, no one was killed or injured that we know of. That hasn't been the case over the past few weeks, though, on the Israeli side. But the attack, quote, caused damage to at least one home and ignited fires. It prompted evacuations and triggered sirens in northern towns throughout the north of Israel. Some of the rockets were intercepted by the IDF. Others landed in open fields. Thank God. Again, it seems no one was hurt, but a house damaged. And folks, I can tell you, in a beautiful community in northern Israel along the Lebanon border, like Metula, several houses have been completely demolished by this Hezbollah rocket, missile, and drone barrage that has really been sustained since October 8th, 2023. Remember, Hezbollah unilaterally, the day after Hamas launched its massacre, it invaded southern Israel. Hezbollah threw its hat in the ring, began barraging Israel as well. Unprovoked, Hezbollah, in brotherhood with its fellow Hamas jihadis, both Iran proxies, Hezbollah got involved, and Hezbollah has vowed, remember, to keep up the attacks against Israel until there's a ceasefire in Gaza, in solidarity, I suppose, with Hamas. So this is going to continue. Now, again, Hezbollah, I think Hezbollah was stunned by that preemptive strike about a week and a half ago that Israel carried out. I think that was actually August 25th. Stunned that Israel foiled those larger Hezbollah plans. And I think Hezbollah is regrouping and trying to figure things out over the past week and a half. But now they seem to have, again, settled back into a familiar groove. And folks, at the end of the day, it's an absolutely unacceptable groove, if you want to call it that. This is absolutely unacceptable. It's unsustainable. It's been nearly a year now. Hey, the October 7th anniversary is only about a month away. Hard to believe. 11 months of this, where the residents, at least 60,000, probably more residents of northern Israel, have been evacuated from their homes with no clear date on when they can return home. They're living out of suitcases in hotels around the country and just trying to find a place to lay their head every night, as their homes, some of their homes have been destroyed by this constant stream of Hezbollah projectiles. What about Israeli kids who live in the north? What about their return to school? There's no hint of normalcy right now if you live in northern Israel. Folks, I was there in February 2024. It was almost 7 months ago. It was a ghost town then, I'm sad to say. And it's such a beautiful area. Northern Israel is picturesque. It's beautiful. The people there are wonderful. I love northern Israel, but I can tell you that it's gotten much worse since February when I was last in Israel. It's even more emptied out now. And I continue to say this, and I'm going to repeat it because it's important for you to know. Because again, the world seems to be yawning when Hezbollah launches over 100 rockets at Israel over the course of a few hours. Folks, before October 7th, that would be a very big deal. And before October 7th, Hezbollah would have been struck forcefully and probably decisively by Israel if it dared carry out such an attack. Now Israel's pulled literally in 7 different directions. What do I mean by that? 7 fronts that Israel's fighting on. Of course, Hamas, Islamic Jihad, and Gaza. First front, that's been Israel's overriding focus and goal to finish the job in Gaza and stamp out Hamas once and for all. Number 2, of course, Hezbollah in Lebanon. Number 3, the Houthis in Yemen. Number 4, Iraq, Shia militias there. Number 5, Syria, where you've got all sorts of nasty actors, Iran-backed militias, Iran's Revolutionary Guards, Hezbollah, etc. They're all in Syria. Then you've got Iran itself launching directly already and potentially doing once again. They still continue to threaten Israel directly. And then you've got the West Bank, Judea and Samaria, the biblical heartland of Israel. I'm going to discuss that more in a minute. But again, Israel spread a bit thin, but eventually, we've been saying this for 11 months, it's a question of if, not of if, but when Israel's going to move against Hezbollah decisively eventually. I don't know what the thinking is, the strategic vision here for why it has taken so long and why it's been delayed. I suspect that a big reason for that, well, the most obvious reason, Israel doesn't want to fight major wars on 2 fronts, Gaza and Lebanon. Totally understandable. Although it seems that Gaza, in a major sense, major operations is probably winding down at this point. But the other overriding reason, I think it's pretty obvious to see, is relentless world pressure. And that pressure in particular is coming from the Biden administration. And there's no 2 ways about it. The Biden administration has tied Israel's hands in a few ways. Number 1, preventing Israel from acting decisively against Hezbollah. Begged Israel for months not to enter Rafah. How did that work out? Kamala Harris said she studied the maps and she didn't think Israel should go into Rafah. Well, guess what? Rafah was a hornet's nest of Hamas terror where hostages were and are being held in tunnels. Thank God Israel went in and destroyed Hamas battalions there, at least saved a few hostages out of Rafah. And of course, the Biden administration tying Israel's hands from acting in a very meaningful way against the Iranian regime, or at least trying to tie Israel's hands. And the caveat there is the Biden administration can say, look, maybe we'll just withhold arms shipments, Israel, if you don't do what we want you to do. And Israel's in a tough spot because it's allowed itself to become so reliant on U.S. military hardware and U.S. armaments over the years. And that's why there's more and more chatter in Israel and concrete action where Israelis are saying, you know what? We should probably produce our own weapons as much as possible. As much as a tiny nation the size of the state of New Jersey can, we should probably try and be a little more self-reliant on our own domestically produced weapon systems. It's going to take a while. It's not going to be an overnight thing. But I think it was a bit short-sighted for Israel over the years to become too dependent on U.S. armaments, because what if you get a hostile administration in the United States? And look, Israel should have learned that under Barack Obama. And now, once again, The Biden administration, on one hand, is supplying Israel with armaments and weapons. It has, no doubt. But on the other hand, it's withholding some and just in a public, very public way and in the diplomatic realm, making Israel's life miserable. So it's a schizophrenic policy, and we've called it that here many times. And it's not good. And it sends the wrong message to the world, a message of daylight between Israel and the United States, of distance. And when Israel, the shared enemies of Israel and America see that, they're licking their chops and they're getting more bold and more confident. Hey, we're talking about the madness in northern Israel and in southern Israel, the madness of tens of thousands of people evacuated from their homes for close to a year now. And a key point here, you cannot have, over a prolonged period of time, a crucial region of your country, especially when you're, again, a country the size of the state of New Jersey, evacuated. That's just terrible for Israel's economy. And yet, northern Israel remains a ghost town now for nearly a year, with tens of thousands of very productive workers evacuated from their homes and businesses. Same with southern Israel near the Gaza border. Now, some families are trickling back to those Gaza border regions. But folks, look, over a prolonged period of time, it's simply unsustainable. This is Israel's time of greatest need. Since 1948, certainly, when Israel was miraculously reborn as a nation. And I'm asked often, what can I do? Because if you're a friend of Israel, you see and you know Israel's up against it, not only in a physical, tangible sense against the Iranian ring of fire that surrounds Israel on all sides, but also from this diplomatic onslaught. I talked about the relentless pressure coming from Washington, D.C. It's coming from Europe as well. It's coming from the UN. College is back in swing here in the United States. The college campuses, I'm sure, will flare up again with pro-Hamas, anti-Semitic, anti-Israel sentiment. So Israel's kind of catching it from all sides right now, and Israel could use a few good friends right now. That's where you and I come in. And the sponsor for today's live stream, my good friends at Magen David Adom. Now, Magen David Adom are Israel's emergency first responders. They're the first ones on the scene. Every time there's, God forbid, a terror attack, any sort of mass casualty event in Israel, mass and smaller, whatever, Magen David Adom ambulances are there. They're the first on the scene. Folks, I'm in Israel frequently. Magen David Adom ambulances are everywhere. They are doing God's work on the ground, some 30,000, mostly volunteers, who are quite literally risking their lives. At least 30 Magen David Adom volunteers have been killed since October 7th in the line of duty, serving and blessing the people of Israel. Again, a largely volunteer force, but this is Israel's emergency first responders. They're the first ones on the scene. SaveLivesIsrael.com. It's SaveLivesIsrael.com. They also take all of Israel's emergency calls. They're in charge of Israel's blood supply, and that's obviously crucially needed in times of war. So an incredible, again, largely volunteer force. People who have day jobs, in many cases, are risking their necks and their lives to work for Magen David Adom. You want to bless Israel. You want to fulfill that biblical mandate laid out in Genesis 12:3 to bless the people of Israel. And again, Israel's time of greatest need. This is the way to do it. SaveLivesIsrael.com. Magen David Adom. I encourage you to support them, and we're proud to stand with them as a sponsor for the live stream. You can tell who your true friends are when the chips are down. Well, the chips are down in many ways for Israel right now. The people of Israel are resilient, and they're winning in Gaza. They're going to prevail over Hezbollah and these darker forces with God's help. But in the meantime, Magen David Adom is a good way to help them get there. SaveLivesIsrael.com. Check them out. Okay. The sense of normalcy that we see now with these Hezbollah barrages against Israel is really stunning. And I said earlier that if not for the Gaza war, Israel would have dealt with Hezbollah 11 months ago when Hezbollah began firing these rockets at Israel. And you could argue that Israel has to an extent. Look, hundreds of Hezbollah terrorists have been killed in these exchanges with Israel. Several top commanders, obviously Fuad Shukr, about a month ago, a little more than a month ago, taken out in Beirut. Big fish, Hezbollah's top military commander. So Israel has made Hezbollah And with that stunning preemptive strike last week, made Hezbollah pay a heavy price, no doubt. And it can't be a situation where I believe Israel kind of settles into the tit for tat and the world kind of accepts it. No, Israel eventually is going to have to take care of business in the north in a major way. Why? That's not warmongering, as some would accuse. You're a warmonger. No, I simply want the residents of northern Israel to return home and be able to have normal, fully functioning lives and contribute and be able to have the north of Israel contribute to the overall health of the country once again. That's called sanity and common sense, which is in short supply in the world right now. And we need Hezbollah pushed back from the Israel-Lebanon border so the residents of northern Israel feel comfortable enough to return to their homes in the north. Right now, that ain't happening, and that needs to change. You can't have an indefinite situation where people are scattered throughout the country, refugees, in a sense, in their own country, living out of suitcases in hotels for a year. You can't have it. So that's not warmongering to say, you know what? Israel probably needs to deal with this threat pretty decisively. And the big litmus test has been, okay, will Israel push Hezbollah back some 18 miles beyond the Litani River in Lebanon? God willing, at least, in the very least. But eventually it's going to have to happen. If you follow this closely, if you watch this live stream on a regular basis, this is not a surprise to you. This can't go on indefinitely. Eventually, Israel is going to have to act decisively. The world will howl and gnash its teeth. Prepare yourselves. But Israel is going to do what needs to be done. Now, that brings us to Iran and the strategic vision of the Iranian regime. In that vision, Gaza has always been so crucial. On one hand, I say so crucial, not because the Iranian regime genuinely cares about the Palestinian people or genuinely cares if Hamas or Islamic Jihad live or die, other than to be used as cannon fodder for the Iranian regime. The Iranian regime could care less about the Palestinian people. But it's crucial, or was at least, in terms of being a thorn in Israel's side. Whenever Iran wanted to stir things up against Israel, bother Israel, cause a distraction for Israel, Iran would activate either Hamas or Palestinian Islamic Jihad in Gaza. It was a persistent thorn in Israel's side for years. And that thorn became much bigger than a thorn on October 7th, obviously, with cheerleading and support from the Iranian regime. Now that's gone. Those days of thousands of rockets coming out of Gaza and creating maybe a week-long mini war with Israel or 10 days. We saw this time and time again since 2008, right? And the rockets began before that. Finally, in late 2008, Israel went at it and really hit Hamas hard in Gaza. It became intolerable. But now that's essentially gone. We've seen a trickle, certainly, of Hamas rockets over the past few months, but emphasis on the word trickle. So if Iran loses that ring on the Ring of Fire, it loses the Palestinian ring. That was Gaza. It's got two things in mind, folks, as it surveys the landscape. Number one, it's saying, wow, Gaza's pretty much out now. Now, Gaza won't be out if Israel withdraws too soon, agrees to a temporary ceasefire, evacuates the Philadelphia corridor between Gaza and Egypt, which is Hamas's main source of rearming through that corridor. Seems to be common sense what Prime Minister Netanyahu is saying to secure that, for Israeli forces to remain there and secure that Philadelphia corridor, but I digress. But unless that happens, unless the Philadelphia corridor is wide open and weapons start coming through and Hamas rearms and regroups, then Gaza, for all intents and purposes, can't do much for the Iranian cause right now. That ring on the Ring of Fire is but a flicker at this point. So, number one, Iran says, okay, if that's the case, then Hezbollah becomes even more crucial. We cannot let Hezbollah be crushed. Hamas and Islamic Jihad are crushed. We can't afford to lose Hezbollah. Hezbollah, in essence, is too big to fail. That's what the Iranian regime is saying right now. That's number one. So you're going to see if and when Israel and Hezbollah go at it in a major way, and Hezbollah's on the ropes, and I believe they will be, because I believe Israel's not playing around, and Israel knows this is the moment to deal with this once and for all. I believe there's a good chance that Iran will directly get involved in some form or fashion. Again, Hezbollah, the crown jewel of Iran's proxies, too big to fail. Keep that in mind, because the Iranian regime certainly is. That's number one. And number two, the regime is saying, okay, Gaza has gone by the wayside. We need another front. And in particular, we need another radicalized Palestinian front. I bring you the West Bank, Judea and Samaria, the biblical heartland where a good chunk of your Bible took place. Iran has been at least several years, 3 years more, 3 years intensifying, but going back more than 3 years, really trying to build up its operations in the West Bank, Judea and Samaria, smuggling through neighboring Jordan, and wanting to create a major front in, pardon me, as an email came through here on my laptop, a major front in Judea and Samaria. And folks, we we discussed with you in the past week that Israel has carried out some pretty significant operations in the West Bank, Judea and Samaria, and that's all geared towards pushing Iran back out of that area. Israel says, look, we will not let the West Bank, Judea and Samaria become a complete hornet's nest of Iranian-backed terror groups, Hamas, Islamic Jihad, and all the rest. Some good reporting here from Jerusalem Post on it, by the way. I'm going to pull it up for you. Jenin, Tulkarm, the two main targets right now of Israel's operations. Nablus has been a thorn in Israel's side over the years as well, but Palestinian Islamic Jihad particularly strong there. According to the J Post, armed and funded by Iran, surprise, surprise, these battalions, whose members, again, are affiliated with Palestinian Islamic Jihad, Hamas, and the ruling Fatah faction, headed by Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas, they began operating in the northern West Bank, again, more than 3 years ago. And since then, gunmen belonging to these groups have carried out countless attacks against Israeli civilians and soldiers. Imagine that. Wherever the Iranian regime goes and digs its claws into, misery, chaos, death, and violence follow. Gaza, Yemen, Syria, Iraq, Lebanon, and now the West Bank, Judea, and Samaria. This is a murderous, wicked, tyrannical regime in Tehran. Not the Iranian people, the main victims of the regime, but the regime itself. And I like to remind people, if you haven't watched this before, know this. I brought this up a few times, that the world's fastest growing church right now, largely underground, is in Iran. So be encouraged. You can't stop the gospel, number one. And number two, God is moving in this world in some of the most unlikely places. One last caveat about that West Bank story. Mahmoud Abbas's Fatah movement. Wow. We're told time and time again by Western diplomats and the UN that Mahmoud Abbas is Israel's partner for peace. The Palestinian Authority would be a legitimate partner for Israel to do business with and even let them, run a Palestinian state. That's what we're told. And yet, they're knee-deep in terror still. And still, the Palestinian Authority of Mahmoud Abbas pays the salaries. Folks, wrap your head around this. Heads, plural. Pays the salaries of terrorists who kill Israeli civilians and including American civilians, by the way. These terrorists, many times they're killed, but either them, if they live, or their families receive lifetime stipends from the Palestinian Authority. And Mahmoud Abbas refuses to end it and has refused to disavow those so-called martyrdom payments. And you wonder where your taxpayer dollars are going that flow into the Palestinian Authority, that flow into Gaza, of course, with Hamas, which was commandeering all of that aid, or a good chunk of it. A world turned upside down, where good is called evil and evil is called good. Isaiah, the prophet, described it very accurately, but we're here to try to make sense of it for you. So we really appreciate you joining us. Hey, if you love the YouTube channel, you also love our nightly show on TBN. TBN, check it out, your local cable provider online, tbn.org, TBN Plus. Stakelbeck Tonight, my brand new nightly show, just launched in March 2024, airs every night on TBN, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time and 10:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Good stuff. Everything we're talking about here, much more, interviews, all the bells, whistles, B-roll, graphics, maps that you want on our nightly show on broadcast TV, TBN, again, Stakelbeck tonight, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time, 10:30 p.m. Eastern Time. And you can check out clips from the show on our second YouTube channel. That's right, folks. We've got almost 1 million subscribers on this one, and we've got another one now for Stakelbeck tonight. It's clips from the show. Check it out. Heavy. And for such a time as this, and for good reason, on Bible prophecy and biblical archaeology. I think you'll really like that channel. At Stakelbeck Tonight, at Stakelbeck Tonight. Check it out. Thanks for joining us today. Until tomorrow, God bless you. Keep it all in prayer, folks. And remember, never hold your peace. Hey, everyone. Thanks for checking out the Watchman Newscast. Make sure you hit the subscribe button so you never miss an upload. And tap the bell icon so you're notified every time a new video is posted. And don't forget to share your thoughts, insights, and comments below. Thanks for watching. We'll see you back here tomorrow.